Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is SockBot, and today I just kind of want to talk about a level I've been working on. So, I normally put some sort of commentary or something of the sort related to a topic I've been thinking of for a while surrounding the greater game of Dreams while I kind of play this sort of thing in the background. But I've noticed that recently one of my favorite things to do in Dreams has just been to create. And I know that as a creator within Dreams, that's not surprising, but a lot of the times I find myself kind of shifting between like remembering how exciting it is to just dream surf and how exciting it is to create. But I feel like this is kind of a second renaissance. So back when Dreams first started, I got really excited about creating, obviously because I wanted to learn everything, and obviously because I wanted to share it with everybody online. But I think at the time I was still really learning and kind of struggling through it, and so eventually that waned, and then now here a while later, I've kind of decided to start another new game, even though I haven't really finished any of the previous ones. But I've also been playing a lot recently, and I think that sort of balance between the two is never one to one, and so I always just kind of go back and forth between wanting to play a lot and wanting to create a lot. And this is probably the most fun that I have been having creating. And so, as opposed to try to come up with a third topic of like the 8 that I've tried to in the last 2 weeks, but just haven't quite happened, which I will talk about in a little bit, I just decided to talk about this creation. And so, as you can tell from the background, this is a sort of urban parking lot setting. And I know it's kind of strange, but the only places that I've been able to walk recently, given everything that's going on right now, has been, well, parking lots and various streets that I've been able to walk down in the places that I'm able to walk. And I mean, walk like on the way to the grocery store because nobody should be going out for any other reason than that. But, anyways, it's been just kind of on my mind, and I've always really liked urban settings. I think one of my favorite things to do is just to drive different places, and given that I don't have a car right now, I can't do that. Not for any specific reason, just because I don't really need one, but it's more like a luxury in the city that I live in, and so for now, it's just kind of an interesting add-on. But something that I really enjoyed doing in the past was taking out and just driving between places, whether it be between where I went to school in New York or where I'm from in Pennsylvania, and just enjoying the scenery along the way. Because, I mean, even in Steven Universe, they sort of make fun of what's going on in Jersey, because it does seem to be a lot of highway and a lot of industry. But I actually really like that. And so my favorite parts of the car ride were actually around Philadelphia and around New York, when you got to see these amazing industrial settings of like these huge power plants. And I'm sure they're terrible for the environment, but I've always been kind of fascinated with them. So that's why I decided to make this level, and that's why I decided to kind of talk about it today. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this sort of thing. If you do, don't forget to leave a like down below and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. But yeah, let's just keep talking about it. So that's the basis of where I got the idea for this level and why I decided to start making it. And for the most part, when I create stuff within Dreams, I'm not a huge sculptor. I sculpt things like this background that you're seeing here that's pretty basic and easy to kind of piece together to make it look like a decent desert sort of thing. But for the most part, I do use a lot of community assets, and I think that's the best way to create things. I think that it's the best way to really enjoy creation within Dreams. And it also reminds me a lot of how I created within Little Big Planet, which had to do with, I mean, a handful of materials that you were able to collect from create mode. But it also reminded me of one thing I really liked about Little Big Planet, and that was being able to find these new materials, and once you found them, being able to use them for the first time. And then occasionally I would end up trying to create a certain thing, realize I needed this sort of material, and then looking up online where I could find it, if there was one, and eventually going to find it, because I've never been a huge, like, 100% the game sort of guy, but that's why I've really been enjoying this sort of piecing things together. And I think that through a lot of videos on my channel, I've been able to show that a lot of the pieces, as you place them together, become super unique. Whether you end up modifying them slightly, like I will do later on in this time lapse, or whether or not you just use them as they are in different settings that other people didn't. For example, this brick wall right here is super like nicely and well done, but a big part of making something unique is taking that and not just making a brick house out of it. And in this case, it's just kind of a barrier between the parking lot and assumedly what was some terraformed land in the background that leads towards that lovely cell tower, I think it was. I think I just searched tower when I was looking for a different sort of tower, because I was, thinking about the basis of this level, and ended up going with that, and, well, here we are. But the basis of this level, obviously, is sort of an industrial look in a parking lot, which I think is something I haven't really seen anywhere, which I guess doesn't really affect my creation. It's definitely part of it, but more the idea for this was just to kind of explore that idea and see how much of a scene I could create out of it, and more importantly, to create a game similar to something that I've been playing a lot recently, which is Super Mario 64. So Super Mario 64, I've talked about it before on this channel, and if you've seen, I guess, a certain amount of my videos, at some point you've probably seen I have a Super Mario 64 tattoo. It's kind of between 64 and Galaxy design, but it was custom, so it's somewhere in there. But yes, if that proves it, or if the fact that I have gotten 150 stars even on the DS version proves it, I love this game, and I love it so much. And one of the things that confused me a lot about the quote-unquote sequel to it, which was Odyssey, and obviously that's not the direct sequel. I don't even think Nintendo's officially said it's a sequel, but to me and to a lot of the gaming community, it is considered a spiritual successor to Super Mario 64 in a way that Galaxy and in a way that Super Mario Sunshine really weren't. And that isn't to say anything about the quality of those games at all. I love them all the same, and in some ways they did a lot of things better and more creatively than Super Mario 64 did, but in the spirit of the game, it is the one that feels the most similar to Super Mario 64, but Odyssey had sort of a too much issue, and honestly, it's not really an issue because it just makes the game more unique, and it still makes the game incredible, and still makes it one of, I would say, probably my favorite one, maybe next to 64, but Sunshine's pretty high up there too. It's hard to decide, but it definitely did some things very differently than 64 did, in the sense that when you went into levels, although you could find multiple moons in there, it wasn't in the same progression sense that 64 was, and that's something that I miss a lot. I miss the idea that there is this world you can explore that has a lot of secrets, but instead of just kind of doing a collecting quest, and this is kind of getting back into Dreams here, a lot of games are doing collecting quests these days that feel more like kind of what would be in a larger game as a bonus event, but instead of creating them in the sense of collecting quests, kind of like they feel in other Dreams, and a little bit like they started to feel in Odyssey, when it really was just go here and ground pound and you get a moon. And again, it's not a huge complaint, and there were really fun moons to get in there. I think there is something to say about limiting the amount of stars / moons you can get, and that created this world that was always there, but would change just ever so slightly when you went back to accommodate the different stars that were available. And the coolest part about this, at least to me, was the fact that you could accidentally find stars or accidentally stumble into an area that had stars that you weren't really supposed to get yet, but you could get if you wanted to. And this made it even more fun to go back and play in the future, and it's something that I truly miss about that sort of thing. And now, obviously, this was possible in Odyssey, and Odyssey did a great job of it, but there's just something about starting at almost the same place, and I think every 64 one did start in the exact same place, and then doing the various platform segments and swimming segments and all those things in between to get you to that final star that's so satisfying to me. And I wanted to bring that back in this setting, and so that's the basis of what I'm using for this game. I'm trying to create this big world where I use as many different assets as makes sense, but not overly so, to make it so that there are these different segments of the level that are unique to each quote-unquote star. I actually haven't decided what they're going to be yet, but also actually make it worth exploring other parts of the level, whether it be in the future, like trying to get future quote-unquote stars, or I'm just going to call them stars for now, because maybe I'll just end up making them stars, but to get those stars earlier on if you want to, and kind of encourage that sort of exploration, but at the same time, change things up between levels so that when you get to like the fourth level select that brings you into the same world, it will alter things just slightly enough to keep it interesting. And that's something that seems like it should be more prominent than it is, but weirdly enough, Super Mario 64 and I think a few other platformers at the time, I know that one of the ones I've been thinking about recently was, oh gosh, what's that egg one called? Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up really quick. I'm so mad I had to look that up. It's Billy Hatcher. I just rebought this recently because I remember getting it when I was probably in like the 3rd grade or something like that from my mother, and absolutely having the most nostalgia over it. It was created by the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog and never really got any other games so far as I'm aware, but I loved it. And that I think I loved it because it did a lot of the similar things that Super Mario 64 did. And this isn't to say that I want this level to just be more Mario 64. I've picked a different character, I intend on using different dynamics, but I think that that sort of exploratory model is something that I haven't seen a lot in other games, and something that I really hope to see in more. And part of the reason that this was brought back into my mind has been because I've been replaying Super Mario 64 on my N64, but at the same time I've been realizing how much that gameplay loop still works. I've also realized part of it that doesn't work, though, and that has to do with the replaying segments, and this creates a lot of frustration. I think it's something that scares a lot of people away from creating games like this, because when you do fall in certain places in Mario 64, for example, the one I was playing the other night is this one section that's the water level behind the second Bowser, I forget what it's called, but it's basically Bowser's submarine level, if that rings any bells. And there's this one where the submarine's gone because you destroy it in the 1st or 2nd star. I guess spoiler alert, maybe. But once you get through that, you then have to do this kind of jumping between poles to get the red coins at the top. And this was the first one that, even though I remembered it, I found slightly frustrating because you had to swim and then jump back up this rather difficult timed platforming segment to get back up to the poles to get more red coins. And then if you failed at some point there, even if you got some of them, you'd have to redo that segment to get to the later red coins. And I think that they split this up well, and they did a really good job of creating a central platform that had sort of branches to find the different coins that kept it interesting and kept you from getting too far behind. And there's another one that has to do with Hazy Maze Cave that does a similar thing with the red coins, where you're riding that elevator and you have to get the coins without falling off the elevator, and if you do, you have to restart from the beginning, and that actually does it a little bit even worse than this Bowser water level that for some reason I can't remember, and I'm very mad at myself for not remembering that. But I remembered Hazy Maze Cave, so that sort of thing kind of explains how it can get frustrating in this gameplay loop, but I think that avoiding that in the ways that they do, whether it be because once you get back on that elevator, even though it's kind of annoying to get back up, you have the option of going right or left or up or down, or you can really quickly kind of get to a checkpoint of sorts. That means you don't have to go back to the other segments because you've already gotten the coins from that place. I know I'm rambling at this point, but I think it's important to talk about the not so great parts of this and how to get out of them so that we can talk about the amazing parts that I've been exploring in this level. And that has to do with, obviously, the impetus to explore and kind of do your own thing and enjoy the world as it is, which does give you a better sense of environment and immersion, in my opinion, rather than just having a linear level, as a lot of other games have done. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that can be very fun. I play all of the 2D Marios as well, and those are fantastic. And I played a lot of other sort of, I guess, linear-esque games, even though they're not all super linear. They have elements of being quite linear. And so moving forward into the things that this really encourages, in addition to just, exploring things, I think it really encourages a sense of wonder in the player, which is something that I feel is missing in a lot of other games in terms of discovery. It's really easy to find a game that is, super simple and is very easy to understand what you're supposed to do, and then there's really easy to find these sorts of games that are way too complicated and give you no sort of direction at all. And some people don't like those sorts of games at all. It depends on the level of difficulty that comes with that exploration, but something that reminded me of how much I liked this recently was actually Hollow Knight. And obviously, I have mentioned this in recent videos because I recently beat it and I've been playing it a lot. It's something that's in my mind, so that's why these games come up, because I'm generally playing them at the time. But something I enjoyed about this the most was the sense of exploration that comes when you get to a new area and you don't have a map yet. And it gets pretty tense at that point, because if you don't find a map, then you pretty much lose all of that exploration, except for what you remember yourself, until you get that map if you die. And that can be quite frustrating as well, and there's kind of a fine balance between having these times where a game can be slightly frustrating, and also creating that moment of stress and excitement that comes with, like in a Super Mario 64 level, when you're jumping between those climbable pillars and trying to get all the red coins. there's something that comes with that tension because you know that if you don't do it this time, you're going to fall and it's going to suck to have to get back up there. And yeah, obviously, you don't want it to be absolutely miserable to get back up there. You don't want to punish the player, and you don't want to focus on the idea that you are punishing them. Instead, it's just trying to create those moments of excitement within a game by creating some sort of difficulty when you fall. Now, other games do this based on losing lives, and then you come back immediately and everything's fine. But the more that you increase, like the what do you call it? I suppose the quickness of getting back to where you are, the quicker the reset, I suppose you could call it, the less stressed the player will be. And obviously you don't want to stress your players out, but there's something to be said for creating these moments of tension and what they do for the player and the excitement they give for when they finally complete it. And you see this with a lot of other games in terms of difficulty levels. This is why there was a huge resurgence in difficult games when the Dark Souls series was coming out. And I think that these days that has kind of kept up in the game industry, but it's something that we don't see in every game, and it's something that for a long time we didn't see at all, because yes, it can be frustrating, and especially for people who are new to games and who perhaps don't really want that sort of thing, you just want to relax and play. Well, you don't always want that sort of game, and that's totally fine. I understand why game designers moved away from that to increase mass appeal of the game, and it also doesn't stop people from enjoying the game if you do it correctly. But this kind of difficulty is still something that can be rewarding and that can make a game super fun. And as I go back to these sorts of levels in Super Mario 64, I'm realizing more and more how much I personally miss that and why I want to create a game that includes that sense of difficulty while still not being super awful. And again, this game format does a great job of giving you options there, especially in Super Mario 64, but also in Hollow Knight and various other games like this. They do not force you to do everything, and in fact, in Hollow Knight, you don't even have to get most of the abilities to finish the game. The thing is, it encourages you to keep trying if you want to. And so in Mario 64, it's great because you have all these levels and you only really need a little more than half the stars to actually beat the final Bowser. And there are different things that are absolutely necessary, and sure, those Bowser levels are, tense and can be quite difficult and maybe even frustrating, but the idea is that it's optional, and that for the most part, you're going to have to push yourself to get certain stars that might be harder than others, but there's no stars that are just absolutely super easy, and there's no stars that you have to get that are absolutely impossible. And trust me, I've been trying to get 120 stars on this N64 version, because I don't think I ever did it when I was a kid, even though I did absolutely get them all in Super Mario 64 DS. It's a very different sense when you're playing it on the original N64. But yes, I want to get them, but most people would not have to do that. And so within this game, and I realize I've just ended up talking a lot about Mario 64 in this video, but within this game, that's something that I'm trying to bring back. From the beginning of the level, you're going to be able to choose different stars and try out for things, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you'll always have the option of finding other areas and exploring a little bit to find stars during a section that you might find a little bit more frustrating, and to sort of take a break while still being able to play and enjoy yourself and still make progress within this world. And I think that that's something that these games do super well, that a lot of other games that are more linear kind of struggle with. One of the things that happens in those games, and this is actually something that super frustrated me in the Super Mario 3D world for the Wii U. I still love that game, and it actually turned out to be one of my favorites, but something that kind of soured the game initially for me, and that I had to literally try to ignore because it bothered me so much, was the fact that after you died enough times on the same level, because it's a linear game, because for the most part there's no real way to skip those levels, they had to add this kind of skip function with the invulnerable Tanuki suit that basically stopped you from being attacked by enemies, and you would kill them all if you touched them. And that soured it a lot for me, because even though it was linear, I still wanted the sense of progress that comes with finishing something yourself. And because they introduced that, because you're able to skip that section, it makes it very kind of awkward for anybody that would use that, or that wouldn't want to use that kind of saw the option there and then like, what's the point in getting past this level? There's nothing really to show that I did it myself other than my own personal satisfaction. And obviously I was able to enjoy that personal satisfaction and enjoy the game anyways, because, That's what I did. I ignored it and just said, okay, I'm going to have the personal satisfaction of finishing this. And even though it doesn't show I finished it without the easy mode on, it's good enough for me. But I do think that there's something to be said about that and how I don't really like that, and it's my opinion, of course, and I would never really add that in my game. But looking at the other options you have, instead of adding that sort of skip function, instead of the like Candy Crush style skip this level because it's too hard, but just because I've tried enough times I can skip it. And I don't think that's a great way to go within games. I personally would not do that in my games, but I'm sure there are other people out there that are different types of gamers than me that do really appreciate that sort of thing, and I think that's why I don't mind it in that sort of game, in a Super Mario game, for example. Sure, I may wish it didn't exist there, but clearly they've added it for a reason, and it does give people a chance to avoid that sort of frustration that comes with trying the same thing over and over and getting pushed so far back when you fail it. And I think that there are other ways to do it. There's probably a better way to do it than specifically that, but I think that in a Super Mario 64 sense, in a Hollow Knight sense, giving that sort of stress of it's going to take you a minute to get back here and it could be frustrating puts a little bit more excitement on it when you finally do finish it. And not everybody likes those types of games, and I'm sure there is a limit to how frustrating that can be. I mean, I remember with Demon Souls, which is the precursor to Dark Souls, and one of the only two I played of that series. I played Demon Souls and I played Bloodborne. Not for any reason, I just didn't get to the others. But like, I spent so long finishing the first level in both of those, and it was amazingly fun. And for both of them, I never went past that. And it doesn't mean I don't dislike those games, and I'm sure if I went back and continued playing, I would find that gameplay loop satisfying, but I think I was just exhausted. And so that's just to say there is a limit to this, but I think that Super Mario 64 did a great job of kind of treading the line and making it so that there is still a really fun experience to be had, and it still creates these moments of excitement, and that's what I'm trying to do with this level. Now, obviously, I did talk a whole lot about the different parts of this level that I've been creating, but it's going to be a huge, huge level. I guess more of a world in a Mario sense, but we'll see. I'll let you guys know how this goes, and I'm continuing to come up with ideas for these stars, so let me know if you have any suggestions, and I'll absolutely see if I can incorporate them in a way that I feel is faithful to the level that I'm trying to make. But, I mean, it takes place in a parking lot. I'm not all that serious about it. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of chatty video. I know it's a little bit more than usual, but I guess I've just been pretty excited about these sorts of things, and I'm finally giving myself permission to just talk about the topics I want to talk about, because sometimes I tend to not. I tend to think I'm ranting, and, well, now I am ranting, so I'm going to stop. But I hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for watching this different sort of video. I apologize for not uploading for a couple of weeks now. It's been hitting me pretty hard not being able to go outside, and although I normally work from home, this is driving me a little bit more crazy than I thought initially it would. And I hope that in the next couple of weeks I can be more on a normal schedule, but I guess we'll see. Regardless, thank you so much for supporting me if you're here. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you enjoyed this sort of video. Let me know if you did, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. But for now, goodbye, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Bye.